Talking about immigration, I think it's one of the excuses that people have given with respect to the housing market and the industry generally since the pandemic, especially. So I looked up the data. Let me show it to you here. The impacts of immigration on Canada generally. Canada hit a record high population of 40 million people, a record population growth of 1 million people from January 1st, 2022 to January 1st, 2023. I think that's an astronomical number to think about it. And then they compare this to the 50s, where there was a little population growth, and the population growth in the 50s was actually the baby boomer era, where you had people having high number of births. That's post-war in the 50s, and a little bit of immigration was also responsible for that in the 50s. But now you come to 2022, the major factor that contributed to the million people that added to the population in Canada is due to immigration. About 96% of the 1 million people actually came from immigration. That means automatically that we can assume that birth rate has not increased significantly, but immigration has increased significantly in 1 year period. Now, the more interesting thing here actually is 1 in 3 non-permanent resident holders is showing their living conditions here. Two things are interesting to me here. Out of the immigrants, about 60% are apartment rentals. And then homeowners among the immigrants is about 15% that are able to own a home. And I was listening to Steve Saretsky talking about the impact of immigration on the housing industry, and one key thing he identified was the fact that when it comes to housing and prices, the ability to purchase a home far outweighs the desire to own. And I think that's applicable in anything, in fact, right? If the desire to own anything was equal to the ability to own it, then, if wishes were horses, right? A beggar would ride. To worsen that, let me give you one last example. So I was in Sydney, Nova Scotia. That was just a few weeks ago. The housing crisis there is absolutely insane. And so I was in Sydney to join some community work there, and they asked me to give a talk to some of the immigrant families that were there. And believe it or not, some of them came into the country a month, 2 months after. They're still not able to find a home to rent. No apartment to rent. They can't buy, of course, most of them can't even afford it. And then you see them staying in hotels where they're paying about $4,000 a month. That's what the people are dealing with out there. In fact, I think Sydney, Nova Scotia declared a housing crisis ongoing in that city. When you put all of these together, with you as a player in the space, what does immigration mean to you in the housing industry?
Well, it's very sad, because why? I want to know why. Why have we increased immigration so much right now, or the government, right, in the last 2 years? And it's not. I don't think it's for the benefit of the immigrants. The immigrants think it is when they're coming to Canada, but I don't think it is, and it doesn't make sense. So we have a housing crisis. There's not enough homes for people, and they're too expensive. Actually, I think it's more of the homes are too expensive for the most part, but regardless, there's a housing issue. So what do? Let's invite 3 times more people, or 2.5 times more people than we usually bring into the country, and see what happens, knowing that they're not going to be able to afford homes. So I think that honestly, it's and I've heard this, and it's sad, and I don't even like saying it, because it cheapens the term or the past and the history, but it's like a modern day slavery. Like you're bringing these people in to pay for one, and they've been very clear that why they bring them in. They're bringing them in to support and prop up GDP. They're bringing them in to pay for Canadians' retirements because you need. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? And it's sad. Like it's so sad. The only way to keep a Ponzi scheme going is to bringing new people in at the bottom, and this is why they've increased immigration. I don't see, and they'll say, well, we need more skilled workers, but they bring these people in, and they can't work because their requirements aren't met here. So they should be brought in with those tests being met or those requirements being met and being put to work. Now, most or half of the immigrants are non-permanent residents, which are students and foreign workers. And the students are, the students too, you hear stories about the students that are promised one thing, being sold something from their country, and being told, come to this school. I heard the one story, come to this school, you're taking, you want to take this. And the advisor in their country said, no, you should go to this school for this business administration job. Anyway, this person comes here, they take they show up for the school, and they say, well, we changed your course to hotel, hospitality, and tourism. And she says, well, I'm supposed to be taking business administration. And they said, well, we do this. And so the people, it's not for the people's best interests. They think it is, but Canada's intentions right now are not for that reason. We've always had a consistent model of immigration, consistent numbers. And, once we enter crisis mode, we enter high inflationary times, it just doesn't make sense that you increase immigration by 2.5 to 3 times, depending on the year. So I think that, and now when it comes to housing, they're not going to prop up the housing. People say, well, the argument is, well, prices won't go down because of all the immigrants. And as in the data you showed, like 15% approximately will buy a house. And that's buy a house when, not right when they get here. This is, in a year to 3 years when they qualify and they have a stable job. And immigrants are not rich for the most part. Some people say like, oh, an immigrant, they're these rich immigrants income. And there are certain immigrants that are rich that come, but the majority aren't. The average immigrant comes with $50,000 in savings. And I think that's the average immigrant family. So, and again, I'm an immigrant, and my parents came with 30,000 pounds back in 1988. So I can relate. And there goes a car, there goes your first and last rent, right? So half of that is eaten up instantly. Plus you have to live, and $50,000 for a family, even without a car, it's going to last you a year. And that's living frugal. So honestly, I hate to use the term, but they're using these people. They're using these immigrants to prop up the Canadian economy. And you can look at the numbers when, our GDP or our unemployment, say, we have, 1 million new people. And I think it was, divide that by 12 months. We created 60,000 or 63,000 new jobs in September, whenever the last report was. And our unemployment rate stayed the same. So there, again, if we had normal immigration, our unemployment would be rising. But it's a political tool. These are political. It's a political tool that the government's using to prop up numbers, and I don't care. It's not going to work whether you're trying to prop up the housing or whatever. It's just going to create a bigger crisis, as you've seen. In my city, I live in Niagara Falls. My friend was working. He does construction, and he said he watched. They're living in hotels. These people, these immigrants and migrants and refugees. Asylum seekers. He said he watched 20 of their children. The school bus now stops in front of hotels to pick up the kids. This never happened. This is and how long have they been living there?
That was exactly what I saw in Sydney as well.
Yeah, and so I think it's and I don't know how these people are getting integrated into society. Do they have support for so long and then it's sink or swim? But I don't think, from what I've seen, they have a great support system for them. It's kind of, some, social welfare system. And then who knows what happens after that. But, I've seen a big change. And one last thing I just want to add. And again, somebody commented on this, and now we're using hotel rooms as housing, and we're using housing as hotel rooms with Airbnbs. Like, this is how backwards our society has become. And if it was benefiting people, I would say, I'm going to shut my mouth right now, but it's not. These are the problems, right? So yeah, it's sad, and I think that most people are scared to say we shouldn't be bringing in so many immigrants because you're discriminating against immigrants. It's not discriminating against immigrants. It's not in their best interest.
Right. I totally agree with you. I'm an immigrant too. I'm a first generation immigrant. And when I complain about such, it almost sounds like you're an ingrate, but then I will say I have lived through it. If anything, there is some level of credibility to what I am saying with respect to the living experience for an average immigrant family that is going to run through, burn whatever they come into the country with within a space of a month. And to worsen that, you don't have any employment going for you. So what happens? Why do we now see um, 3 times the number of people that used to be at the food banks? We saw that, right? Just at the last Thanksgiving, about 3 times the people
Yeah.
visiting the food bank right now. And a major contributor to that is immigration. And let me show you one last figure here from what I picked up from what you shared with me. The impact on immigration is, it, I think it's insane to think about. So this is sales of homes, right? And
Yep.
immigration is going up. It can't even keep pace with that.
Yeah. So it's, at first I put this out to say there's an inverse correlation, right? So that,
Right.
the less sales, the more immigrants. But I think this just backs up what I said, and it just proves, the economy, the sales start dropping off, or they know, right? They know that things are getting bad, so they increase immigration to prop up the areas that are suffering in the economy. So again, you're bringing in people, they all have a little cash, not too much, and it just supports the economy. But you're just making the problem worse. And I don't see it fixing itself. And you can look back, like, even to when, not the extreme times now, but 2014 and to 2015, sales were increasing and immigration was decreasing. And back to before 2008, sales were decreasing, immigration was increasing. So it's, I'm sure there's a lag time when immigrants come, but still there's an inverse correlation there. And of course, immigration, you can predict what's going to happen from here on. Immigration will start to decline. The levels of immigration, these are levels, right? They'll start to decline, and of course, the sales will start to pick up in the next couple of years from now. So it's just like bound to happen. But again, it's the relationship between immigration and housing or sales is not significant like people think it is.
The analytics on this channel show about 95% of the viewers on the channel haven't subscribed yet. So you do me a favor by clicking the subscribe button right now. Then I'll keep my promise to continually improve on the quality of the conversations that are produced on this channel every time.